Okay, we're live again. Okay, I had a snack and I decided to continue this work because I'm really excited to finish it. So, all right, let's continue this. So I think what I need to do at this point is for each inner function, we need to recurse while giving it this information, the information about the variable definitions that came from the parent scope. So I'm thinking, I don't know exactly what's the best way to structure this code yet, but for now, I'm gonna pass in the parent scopes here so that initially there will be no parent scope. This is mimicking the code for the parent scopes, mimicking the code for the color, the variable coloring code. Okay, so given this parent scope, so we're gonna take whatever pre-existing parent scopes there are, if they exist. We're gonna add the var defs to it. So I'll say child parent scopes is var defs, and then spread the pre-existing parent scopes on it. So for each level, for each nesting of a function, we'll get another set of var defs if they exist. And then we're gonna recurse on each inner function. So for let inner function of inner functions, we're gonna gather closure info for that inner function. With the new version of the parent scopes. Let me think about that. If I ran this now, I'll probably get a pretty good printout, maybe. That is quite interesting. It's also interesting that initialize UI doesn't have any inner functions. Oh, this should be inner function expression singular. How did that happen? Okay, line 29 over here. We had an error, and the error is the fun value of undefined. Function's name isn't because it's an anonymous function. That makes sense. Okay, so I'm gonna do it like this, maybe. Fun name and fun dot name dot value or anonymous, like that. Sounds great. I wonder why the var refs are undefined. That is highly suspicious. The var ref probably. The var ref, I just need to do a var name before doing value. Okay, we have var refs and the var defs. Maybe for the var refs, I also join it with a comma. Maybe like that. Okay. Okay. So now, oh, what happened? Line 24. Oh, okay. I'll just make a function to do this or thing, okay? Fun, I'll call this function fun name. All right, there we are. This looks pretty good. Thing we need to add to this now is for each variable reference, we need to determine whether it needs to come from a closure or not. So each variable reference is one of these guys here. So we need to just figure out whether it belongs in a parent scope, but I think we need to label the parent scope with perhaps the function name, whereas currently we are only using the var defs, but we need more than that. We need the function name. I'll call this function name is, or maybe even not even the function name, but the function fun node. Just be this node, and then we got variables is the var defs. Okay, like that. That information needs to be in there. Yeah. And then with that information, we are able to figure out which scope which variable belongs to. And that can happen maybe here. So we need to figure out which scope, which parent scope. We also have our var defs, which is our scope. So which scope each variable var ref belongs to. So for let var ref for each RRS of var refs, I'm gonna first try ours. Try our scope. This is var defs, so I guess I'll loop through. How should I loop through? Is there a find function in the array now? There is. Okay, I'll use find. Var. Wait. Let me Google it. MDN find. Can I pass in a callback function to test? I can? Okay, that's great. I'll use find. So I'll find the variable definition for which the variable definition's var name value is same as the var refs var name value. Yeah. Let me make sure for variable reference. Var reference also has a var name. Yep. So I'll say local scope is whether we find that or not. So if it's local scope, then I don't know exactly. And then we'll find a parent scope. If not local scope, I guess we'll try to find it and parent scope. Try to find in parent scope. Okay, so that would be looping through the parent scopes. Maybe we also use this find thing. Yeah, why not? Parent scopes dot find. I want in the parent scope we just change it to have this format, so it will have a fun node and variables. Okay, or should I call this variables? Is fine. So I wanted to find the scope for which the variables scope dot variables. I'll also do this find thing. I can't stop using this find now, and I just learned about it. It's crazy. Variable. The variables var name. I'll just call it v. That var name dot value is triple equal this var ref. This one. Var refs var name dot value. I think that's what we want. Yeah, and now I'll get a scope. Now if I do find that scope, then what I want to do is say I'm not sure if this is the right order to do it actually, but let's do it this way first. I'll just say print out something for now. If we did find a scope, then we'll say this variable belongs to scopes fun node name value, and that would just be that function. So else we'll just say I need to do that value, do that here as well, is local. Okay, let's see if that works. Well, I'll run that one. Oh, oops, line 27 has an error. Trying to get value of undefined. I am doing a var ref and a var def. Which of them doesn't have a var? Var. Oh. That's fine. I guess var def doesn't have a var name. It's just okay. Oh, nice. Button is local. Body is local. Button is local. Body is local. Button is local. Counter is local. Let me figure out this error first. Line 31 is var ref. Scopes dot variables. Those variables. Oh, that will not have var name either because it came from a var def. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Button is local. Do we have anything? Oh, label belongs to initialize UI. Let's see if that's true. Yeah, I agree. counter belongs to main is what we should see. We didn't see that. In here, it should have went through this and said counter belongs to main. Oh, it thinks counter is local. Oh, it thinks counter is local because... Wait, why? Why does it think counter is local? It's hard to read like this. I kind of want to indent this console output, so I'm gonna add a level which starts at 1. This is a trick that I use often when I'm doing recursive programming. The next time you recurse, you add 1 to the level, and then if you do that, you have an indentation which you can do like this. Like that. That will make an array of that length, and if level was 0, you get an array that has 1 thing in it. You join it, if it has 1 thing in it, you wouldn't get any of these empty. This is 2 spaces. If you had 2 things, it'll join it with 1 set of 2 spaces. If you have 3 things, you get 2 sets of 2 spaces, so 4 spaces, and so forth. And then in the various places where you indent, where you print, you add the indentation to it, to the beginning, and then you get indentation. Oops. Let's see. All right, let's try that. Yeah, that's nice. Okay. So yeah, in the main function. Oh, inner functions. Wait a minute. 1 second. Something might be off. I think something, because the main function doesn't actually contain body. Is initialize UI that contains body, so it shouldn't have found those. I don't think the main function is the one that should have found. Let me do a print out here. And I misspelled gather. Oh. I think I know. This is actually quite interesting. So maybe I should... this might be right, actually. Maybe do it like this. Alright, main function. All of these things are... okay. Main function, and then the inner functions. Okay. This might be correct. I'm gonna make a blank line here, which you can do by calling console.log. Okay. Alright, this the output is actually slightly weird, but this is basically saying for main function we have no variable reference, 2 variable definitions. And then we got the inner functions of main function is initialize UI. Let me have the code itself side by side so you can sort of verify these things. Yeah, oops. Yeah. And then we drill into function, the function initialize UI over here. And it finds these variable references, button, body, of the and button. These are local. These are the variable references. The variable definitions are body, button, and label. So body, button, and label. Okay, that's good. And then we go into the anonymous function. It thinks counter is local, and that is totally wrong. Oh, but the reason it thinks it's local is because there's an assignment here. I got it. So if it can find the, even if it has an assignment locally, if that variable has already been defined in the parent scope, you should respect that one instead. And we need to put that rule in there. So in order to have that rule, we kind of have to flip the order. We need to try to find it in the parent scope first, before trying to find it in the local scope. Okay, so if we did find it, then else, if we didn't find it in the parent scope, then we should try to find it in the local scope. So yeah, okay, so and then if we found it in the local scope, then we can print this, but else we have a problem that the reference to undefined variable. Undefined reference. And okay. So now it thinks counter belongs to main, which is correct. It thinks label is local, but here it thinks label belongs to initialize UI, which is also correct. It's defined here. Okay, I think this is great. I want to test the case where we have an undefined reference, like you misspelled label, like that. And label is an undefined reference. So yeah, so this is an example of static analysis uncovering errors in your program. So that's great. We might even throw an error in that case. Maybe we should. Okay, so I think at this point we are kind of close to having a registry that says what variable references what scope what scope belongs to what scope. So maybe I make a dictionary here called closures, and then if you find a thing that belongs to another scope, you'll add an entry to this closures so you initialize it for the initialize an entry in the closures dictionary if it doesn't exist yet. Make an array, and then so that's an array now, and then you're gonna push this var ref in there, maybe like that, and then you'll get this closures object. see if this closures object is what I want. So main has no closures because it has no outer scope. Neither does initialize UI. Oh, let me put an indentation in there. It looks kind of jarring without it. Okay, and then initialize UI doesn't need a closure either because it doesn't actually reference any variable that were defined in main. And then the analysis function does need closures. In particular, it needs two variables from main and one variable from initialize UI. Can't really see what they are. I guess what I could do is do this. But I also have a feeling I might want... Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, so the inner function needs two closures. It needs to closure to main for these two variables, and it needs the label from the initialize UI scope. Now the question is, how do I communicate that information back to the code generator? What I'm thinking is I make a map. There's two contexts within which I need this information. One is when I'm generating code for the function node, I need to know whether any of my inner functions need me to save these variables in a closure. So here I need that information. Down here I also need that information. But up here what I need to know is what variables do I need to put in a closure. And then up here what I need to know is what variables should come from which closure. And also, oh, I see a duplicate here, the counter here. So maybe to remove the duplicate, I also make this dictionary as well. Like that. And then, yeah, it's just a dictionary with booleans. Or I could use a set for that as well. And ECMAScript set for that as well. That's also possible. So okay, I think maybe what I do is make maybe two dictionaries or two maps. One map to tell the main function that it is gonna need to save the counter inside of a closure. On the second one, because we could, I'm foreseeing the case where we have, I'm actually gonna just show you that case I'm foreseeing. But if you have multiple event listeners, and one of them needs to access counter 1, I don't know, there's a counter, but there's also a I don't know, last clicked time or something. I don't know, or let's just do counter 1, counter 2. I'll make another counter 2. Like that. So if we did that, we have two anonymous functions. One of them needs counter from main. The other one needs counter 2 from main. Main is going to need to put both of these within a closure, and that closure will actually be shared amongst both of these functions. Maybe? Not sure. Or we could create separate closures, one for each inner function, but that seems like a lot to manage. So it seems like at first glance or at first thought, I would put both of these inside the same closure in the main function. Yeah. Okay, let's try that. So that means to make that information easier to access, let's have one dictionary that tells the functions what variables need to be stored in the closure, and have a separate dictionary that tells functions what variables that they're referencing need to go to which closure. Okay, let's go with that. So that means this guy needs more parameters. So it needs a closure variables map, and it also needs a closure references, closure dependencies. Let's call it dependencies. Closure preserves and dependencies. Dependents versus dependencies. Dependent. You're the one that's being depend on. Provider. Closure provider. Closure providers, maybe. Providers. And there are two separate dictionaries. Closure providers is a new map. Why am I using a map? Because this is a case where the keys I want to use are not strings. I want to use the actual node as the key. And in normal JavaScript, you cannot do that, but with maps, you can. So I'm going to use that feature. I'll show you. So closure provider. So once I get this, once I find that, some variable reference should belong to some scope, this is the place where I need to enter information into these dictionaries. Maps, I should say. And then I also pass the same dictionary into here. Okay, so I'm gonna do it like this. I'm gonna leave the rest of the code, all of this code that prints stuff out, just for diagnostics, just for me to be able to see what the program is doing right now. So I might just delete all of this code here, the ones that are just for diagnostics. But right now, the most important thing I'm trying to get at is this closure providers. I know that I'm gonna attach a closure provider is the way I'm envisioning it. Where's my stylus? There it is. The the way I'm envisioning this is a closure provider is a registry that says it's a registry. You can look at it as a dictionary, but it's a MDN. It's an ECMAScript map, ES map. If you haven't seen that before, look it up. So where the key, there are key value pairs, just like a normal object, except the key can be a node object. So the key in this case is this function node of type function expression or function definition. Okay, that's too long, so I'm gonna write fun for short. So yeah, just fun, type fun. And maybe the name of the function is main. Okay, and it's got other stuff in this. This is an AST node. This is a fun AST node. That's what that is. The value of this, I want it to be like a set of variable names, really. Maybe use ESSet here. It's a set of variable names. In this case, it would just be like counter 1, counter 2. That's the set of variable names that this function needs to save into a closure instead of using the normal stack structure. And then we'll, for a different function node, maybe the name is initialize UI. It'll have a different set. It'll have a different set with the variable name label in there. Okay, so that's what I'm going for. And this is the perfect place to do that because I just found out something belongs to a certain scope. So I'm gonna say, hey, closure provider. I need to ask it whether there's already an entry in there or not. So, and this scope.fun node is the function node. Excuse me. Yeah. So does that entry var set, does that exist already? If not, var set is there a has? There might be a has. MDN map. There's a dot has. Okay, I'm gonna use dot has. If it doesn't have the fun node as a key entry, then I'm gonna just initialize that. Like closure providers dot set, using the fun node as the key, and then the value would be a new set, and this is a ES set. I don't know if ES6 or ES7 or ES whatever, but once it's definitely there, I'm gonna get it back by that key, and I'll say add, and I'll ES set MDN set. This guy's set has a add method. There it is. I'm gonna add just a variable name, which is this one. Add this guy to the closure providers set, and after this process, I should have some closure providers, and I console.logging out the closure providers should allow me to see all of them. Let's see if that works. Oh gosh, oh, that's a map. Yes, I did have, although it's kind of hard to see, they are there, so let me see. So this is a map. This is the main function from all the way from here to here. Oh, and that's it's set. It needs to save off the counter and counter 2. Whereas for the initialize UI, it needs to save off label. That's exactly correct. So awesome. Now let's work on the closure dependency. Oh, in case that was too hard for you to see, let me make that more clear. So this is, you can look at this as an ECMAScript. You can look at this as like a dictionary where it says key value pairs. The first key value pair is this. Where this guy is the thing that says the left of this thing is the key and the right of this thing is the value. So that is the value, and this thing is the key. So basically this key is our AST node, is the function node, and that's what I wanted, because I wanted to later on the code generator is gonna do yet another traversal through the AST, and I want to ask this provider map what variables need to be saved off into a closure, and this map will be able to give me that answer. And then the rest of this is yet another entry, key value pair entry, where with this arrow symbol, again, that's the key, and this set is the value. So that's what I'm going for. Okay. All right, now I'm gonna do the same thing with the closure dependencies, and I think once I get this working, I'm gonna call it a day, and I'll save the generator work for another day. So okay, so the closure dependencies, this is also the same place where I would set that up. Because here I'm basically saying, well, I already grabbed the information I need in this thing called closures. Maybe call them closure dependencies, or I don't know what's the best name for it. The terminology around closures is kind of confusing. What I'm gonna do is just put an entry into that with that as the value, and I'm gonna attach the current node, which the current node would have been the function node. I'm gonna attach this closures object to it. So now if I printed that out, I'm gonna comment out the other one just so that I get less output. If I printed that out now, this is the closure dependencies map, and I can see that for the main function there's no closure dependencies. For the initialize UI function, there's no closure dependencies. For this anonymous function, there are actually two anonymous functions. The first anonymous function, the closure dependency is I need the counter variable for the main function, and I need the label variable for the initialize UI function. And then for the next inner function is I need the counter 2 variable from the main function, and also these guys are represented in the providers map that we've created so far. And also, since we are making use of sets, I might as well make that uniform and use sets here as well instead of an object with values of true. So here and here and here I will change it to use a set as well. And this guy can say add. And that works. Yeah, now it's a set with a counter and a set with a label. Perfect. That's really cool. I think I did it. I'm going to this output is a little hard to read though. But that's okay. I think I'm happy with this. I'm gonna comment out all these console.logs, which are only for diagnostic purposes. So this one, well, maybe put a warning here, or maybe even when there's an undefined references, I'm gonna flip this conditional and throw an error. When we have an undefined reference, we can even print a line number actually. Let's go ahead and do that. Var ref dot var name start line. On line. And that's the line number. Okay. I'm coming out that line. And okay, I think that's good. Yeah, so this is the dependencies map and the providers map. Okay, the closure providers, the main has to provide counter and counter2, and initialize UI has to provide label. And then the closure dependencies map says the main function has no dependencies, the initialize UI function has no dependencies. The first arrow function depends on main, and for its counter variable depends on initialize UI for its label variable, depends on main for the counter2 variable. Yeah, and that seems to be working. I want to test that throwing out the error. So if I misspelled label again, compile the code. We get an error and we get a line number as well. So label on line 8 is an undefined reference. Line 8. Yeah, we can even print out the column. On line 8, column var ref.var name start call. Yep, line 8, column 23. Awesome. Okay, this is great. I'm happy with this progress. Let me just take a quick look at my to-do list. I haven't done this one. I think I have verified that the multi-level closures work, and I have not done number 3. And also I still have to write a the closure notes file. These are notes I wrote for myself, so I did number 1. Okay, I haven't done number 2. I haven't done 4. Okay, I have only done number 1 so far. That was not super easy, but yeah, I did it, and I think I'm gonna, wow, I need to commit the code. Why is there a file called open bracket? I'm gonna remove that file. Okay, let me commit this code. Actually, there's code from the coloring session that I haven't committed, I believe. Yeah, this is a lot. This would be a very, very big commit. Wow. I should have committed at the end of the session last time, but I did not. Okay, I'm just gonna commit what I have right now. This is not going to be a clean commit no matter how hard I try, so I'm not gonna try too hard to get that to happen. I'm gonna add all of the closure example files. I'll also add my closure notes to the repo as well. Right, is there the save file? Oh, I don't know if I wanted that or not. I'll just add everything actually. All right. Okay. Got closure. Sure, gathering, info gathering during to work. I'll push this code up and I'll stop this stream right now. Thanks for watching.